Okay, well, welcome. My name's Luke Zadkovich. I'm a partner at the law firm Floyd Zadkovich. We're running a series of podcasts and videos where we're speaking to our international network about the consequences and what's happening in their parts of the world with the COVID-19 crisis. I'm pleased to introduce our guest today, Marcelo Sammarco. From Sammarco Advogados in Santos, Brazil. Marcelo is a partner at the law firm. He's a maritime lawyer experienced in P&I matters such as loss and damage to cargo and shipping accidents. He is the president of the Maritime Law Commission of the Santos Bar Association, chairman of the marketing committee at the CBAM, Brazilian Center for Maritime Arbitration, and member of the respective board. He's also the marketing director of ABDM, Brazilian Maritime Law Association. Marcel is also the guest professor of the postgraduate course in maritime law at the Catholic University of Santos, Uni Santos. He's authored many articles and is a regular speaker on the circuits, both in Brazil and internationally. And I'm delighted that he's here today to share some of his thoughts and experience in how to deal with the current crisis, and also we might touch upon some of the strategies and actions that can be used in Brazil to protect clients' positions. So welcome, Marcelo.
Hello, Luke. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much to stay here to talk about the things in Brazil, how Brazil is dealing this situation, special situation, this challenging facing the COVID-19 and the effects in the port and ship sectors. So it's a pleasure for me to talk to you about these things in Brazil, and also to talk about special legal proceedings in Brazil in respect of shipping matters. So thank you very much, Luke.
Floyd Zadkovich, International Commercial Lawyers. Well, it's our pleasure to have you here. So I think just starting at the top, how are you doing? How's the firm handling operationally this issue?
So, firstly, we adopted the home office regime to everyone in your team in order to keep our team and also our clients and partners safe during this period. So we are now completing about 30 days remote working. And the first challenge was how to organize the things, the proceedings, with everyone of our team working in our home office regime. Because it's a little bit different when we have one or two guys from our team working at home. Now we have everyone in our team working in a home office regime, so it's a little bit different. We need to pay attention to everything in order to keep the things organized and especially to keep the team integrated.
We're having the same type of issues in that you've got a lot of moving parts in a law firm. It's not just the actual casework and getting that in order, which in some ways is sometimes the easier part, but it's all the logistical arrangements with administration, finance, and all the other providers, and keeping all that going in one way or another is a challenge. But from I'm sure it's the same for you, relatively speaking, we're able to keep fully operational and maintain our service delivery. And I know there's a lot of other businesses out there that are not in that kind of position. So yeah, I'm pleased to hear that.
So, fortunately, nowadays we have the technology that helps a lot. So we can arrange meetings to integrate and organize the things with everyone in your team, and also meetings to attend clients in a easy way. So nowadays we can use these tools to help us. And it's curious because my impression is that we are working more now than before the quarantine period. We are more productive, I think, than before these times. And also our clients are demand more, especially in our sector. We can talk about this in the sequence of our topic. But so we are in a very, very special period for a very special time for our law firm.
Yeah, I think that's it's an interesting point actually, that this challenge that we're meeting is going to change the way that we do business and the way that we interact, I think, in some not so good ways and in some positive ways. And I think there are opportunities in the way that we work and efficiencies that can be used. Whereas previously we might have been more reluctant to use some of the technology, but actually we are finding with our staff that they are really rolling up their sleeves and being productive. They know what a serious time it is for our clients and for the business. And productivity hasn't really been much of an issue in that sense, whereas traditionally you might have had the view that, okay, if staff are working from home, is that going to be a problem on a productivity perspective? But at least we're not seeing that, and indeed we're finding new ways to communicate with our clients that we would not have used previously. And in our business, like yours, with international clients as well as domestic clients, having these tools and the technology can be quite useful.
Yes, sure, absolutely. Also, we can talk about to give you an overview on the situation here in Brazil, with respect to the quarantine and the changes in ports and shipping sectors. First of all, it's important to say that Brazil has a big number of citizens. So we have more than 200 million citizens in Brazil. So about a month ago, the federal government implemented the quarantine for all over the country. All cities or cities in Brazil adopted the quarantine regime. So we started this period 30 days ago. We have now about 30,000 people that were affected. So just to give you an overview on the situation in Brazil, this time, Brazil is a big country in terms of the population. Brazil has over than 200 million citizens. So it requires special attention in terms of control the situation in respect of the COVID-19. The federal government adopted and determined the quarantine about 30 days ago for all over the country. So actually, it was not determined lockdown. The federal government determined the quarantine with restrictions for a lot of services and the operations, but kept essential services.
Yeah.
Like port and airport operations, inland transportation, healthcare, banking, and also provision of food and the other essential goods, police protection. So these essential services.
And are the ports and the terminal operators, are they all part of essential services? So are they all still operating in the usual way?
Yes, this is an important thing. It was our main point. Our clients were worried in the beginning of the situation about this, whether the ports would be, ports operation would be kept or not. But fortunately, the federal government kept the ports operations running normally, considering that it is an essential service. But the federal government approved provisional measures, a lot of provisional measures along the last weeks. And one of them is directed, related to port operation. Okay. So this is the provisional measure 945 that sets some special proceedings in terms of port operation. For example, the operation is kept, but with some restrictions, small restrictions. For example, we have now a restriction for embarkment or disembarkment of crew from ships in order to control the health and the health situation. We have some special proceedings to speed up the release of the medicines cargo, for example, and products destined to hospitals. We have a faster proceeding to release this kind of cargo in operations. But the main point is that the ports are operating normally. All the ports in Brazil.
Okay. Are you seeing more, are you seeing more congestion at the ports than usual? Are things operating slowly, or are they still functioning pretty well?
It's still functioning pretty well. The situation did not affect the operation in terms of the agility. Okay, so what we are more worried about now these days is in respect to the inland transportation.
Right.
because we have a problem in inland transportation. Consequently, it will affect the port operation as well. But fortunately, the inland transportation is kept and is operating normally as well. So the situation in this area is controlled.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen a number of importers or exporters trying to declare force majeure and then you send those cancellation notices through?
Yes, we have a specific disposition in the Brazilian Civil Code that in case of a force majeure or act of God, for example, the contractor, the debtor can not accomplish the contractual clause, the payment of the contract, if this special situation is proved. So it causes a worry in the market, in the sector, because if everyone starts to invoke this disposition to not accomplish a contract, we have a big problem in terms of legal proceedings and the negative impact in our economy. So, in my opinion, the applicability of this disposition is very punctual and specific in concrete case. We cannot apply this disposition in general for all contracts in facing this pandemic period.
Yeah, and that raises a difference, I suppose, between, say, the English position and the Brazilian civil code position, in that in England, force majeure is a creature of contract. So you look at the contract and first see if the parties have included a force majeure clause, and if they have, you look at that particular clause to see what events might be deemed a force majeure event, and then also you look at the clause to see what the effect of that event happening would be, whether it's a suspension of obligations, what the notice provisions are under the force majeure clause, and so on. But it's not a standalone principle of law. We have in England the concept of frustration, which is when you have a possibility and the inability to perform a contract that you bargained for. But that's quite a high threshold to get that type of relief. I think we're finding on your point about if everyone just declared force majeure, there'd be a huge economic problem. We are seeing that as well, not necessarily in a force majeure context, but more from a relationship perspective, in that this is an event that no one could have predicted. Well, maybe some scientists, but generally speaking, no one could really have predicted this. It's not anyone's fault. No one's done anything wrong as a matter of commercial contracts. And if there's a way of collaborating and cooperating to find a way through a difficult period, I know commercial partners are really trying to do that where they can. And that has been the early response, more of a collective type approach to it. How long that can go on for I'm not so sure. And we have had a number of clients now that have been involved in cancellations, force majeure notices, not the companies, but debtors of theirs heading into bankruptcy or insolvency proceedings, even now, this early in the process. And I think that's only going to get worse, unfortunately, for a period of time as the economic effects of this continue to play out. Economically,
Yes.
how is Brazil coping at the moment?
So just to this is a big deal. This topic related to the capability of force majeure to contracts. We have different systems here in Brazil and in United States. But just to complete about this topic, another thing that is being discussed here in Brazil is with regards the contracts between private companies that explores port operations and the Brazilian government. Okay, because the ports, most of the ports here in Brazil are placed in a federal area, and we have public contract between the federal union and private companies to explore the operation for a specific period of time under some conditions. And one of these conditions set in the contract is the level, the volume of operation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for example, a container terminal, they need, in accordance to this kind of contract, to accomplish minimal level of performance. Okay, a minimal number of containers,
yeah,
per month. Otherwise, they need to pay penalties, fines to the federal union. So probably in terms of container operation here in Brazil, you have a negative impact because 80 or 90% of the container operation in Brazil is related to import operations. So considering that the Brazilian industry is not working normally, and considering also the high level of dollar rate, you have a reduction on the container operations in Brazil in the next weeks, in the next months. So consequently, these port terminals that operates container, you suffer, you face an impact, a negative impact in terms of volume of operation, which is consequently you affect the special clause in the contract related to the minimal level of the containers movements, containers handling. So, and also in accordance to this kind of contract, the port terminals needs are obligated to pay an amount to Federal Union monthly that it was calculated in accordance to an estimative of the volume of the operation that the area considered by the Federal Union to the private company could attend. So it was the amount of this payment, which was calculated in accordance to the potential of attendance of operation of that area. So now we are very close to reach a reduction, a significant reduction in terms of the volume of operation. And so these private companies are entitled to rediscuss the amount to be paid to Federal Union.
Yeah. It like triggers the negotiation, does it?
Yeah, also that calculation made in the beginning of the contract is not possible to be performed now. So it's a big deal that we have here in Brazil that is being studied and discussed. And I think in few weeks or months we will need to change this topic here in Brazil.
And does that have the potential to impact on other users of the terminals?
So the sector that nowadays we can already say that is really impacted is the container sector. Now we can assure that the container sector is negatively impacted by the pandemic. In respect of other sectors, we cannot yet state about the level of the impact. But it's curious, in the other side, we have important the sector here in Brazil dedicated to export of soya beans, for example.
Yeah.
So sure. In this sector, we have the inverse. This sector is benefited by the high level of the dollar rate, and China, that is an important buyer for this market, is still demanding things. So this is the agri business. It's a special sector in Brazil that will not be so affected than the industry sector, the container sector, for example. So right. we have these different situations in Brazil.
Okay. So Marcelo, what about the court system at the moment? How is that impacted by the complications with the coronavirus?
Yes, the Brazilian court determined the suspension of the time limit of legal proceedings in Brazil. This rule is applied to all over the country. So in the practice, the developments of legal actions are running normally. So the judges are providing decisions, the parties can submit petitions and applications to the judge, but we have no time limit running in any case. Okay, so in the practice we are working normally. We have some urgent matters, for example, an arrest of ship that requires urgent measures, and the judges are attending these kind of measures. The judges are working in home office regime as well. But the only difference that you have now is that the time limit for legal proceedings are suspended. So, for example, if you have a client that receive a claim and usually would have to submit the respective defense in court within 15 business day time limit, counting as from the summons. This specific time limit is suspended. Mm-hmm. However, the client will have the option to submit the defense, even has no time limit running. So this is an option. But if the client prefer to not submit the defense now, there's no problem, because it can be done in the future when the time limit will restart to run. Okay? Yeah. This situation is applied.
Sorry,
we applied to everything, for appeals, everything that you need to attend in court in respect of time.
Okay. Yeah, it's there's a similar situation in the United States. There have been some stays of time bars running. I know in New York State, the state court, they were unable to accept new filings for a period of time, and they put an automatic stay on any limitation periods that may run during those periods. There have also been just blanket 1 month extensions on all court deadlines. So if you had a deadline coming up to file your defense or whatever it is, it was just automatically given another 1 month. And that may be extended again, depending on how long things last. So there have been similar movements in the US on deadlines, time deadlines. As to the courts, the federal courts are still operating. Like you describe in Brazil, the judges are working from home, primarily from their home offices. But the systems are still working. The filing system is electronic, as it is in England as well. A lot of orders can be issued on papers or with telephone conferences for hearings and for trials. Those are being run through video conferencing systems, both in England and Wales, and also in the United States. Criminal actions, those have been postponed for a period of time. At least in England, that's the case, where there's that important function of seeing someone in real life for credibility reasons. But so far as the areas that we work in maritime and commodities and commercial law, the courts are primarily still functioning and moving forward. So yes, there are some complications, but on the whole, things are still moving forward. So if a international company wanted to bring some type of security proceedings on an urgent basis in Brazil at the moment, that would still be possible?
Yes, yes, sure. The court, actually, the court is open. You can file new claims during this time. Okay, we can file, for example, a request for an arrest of ship. We can file a cargo claim in court. You can submit a cargo claim in court at any time. So we can talk about specific things in proceedings in Brazil in respect of the arrest of cargo, arrest of ship, in terms of the jurisdiction. But in general, the court is open and we can file all kinds of claims or type of legal actions in court. Okay. As you said that you have in US, here we can also arrange for a video conference with judge to discuss about a specific topic or mainly to talk about urgent matter. When, for example, we ask the judge to give a virtual order to arrest cargo or ship, for example. But we need to pay attention to specific rules applied here in Brazil in terms of jurisdiction for this matters related to arrests.
So what are, if we just talk about vessel arrests for a moment, I'm interested in whether there are other types of attachments or arrests as well, but if we just look at or discuss vessel arrests, what's the jurisdictional basis to bring an arrest in Brazil?
So first of all, it's important to mention that Brazil is not signatory of New York Convention of 1999. Unfortunately. So in reason of this, we have a very restrict possibilities of arrests cases that can be submitted to Brazilian court. Okay. Because we need to work under the domestic law,
right?
The Brazilian Procedure Civil Code. So, in accordance to our domestic law, an arrest of ship or arrest of cargo or bunker, for example, only can be submitted to the Brazilian court in case that the main claim related to the credit that is object of the arrest request can be submitted to the Brazilian court. It means that, for example, if you have a dispute in US from your client against a third party, and to discuss recovery of credit, and simultaneously you have a ship of owned by that debtor here in the Brazilian coast, you cannot submit a request for arrest of that ship here in Brazil because the Brazilian court has no jurisdiction to decide the main claim. Mm-hmm. So this is the main rule that you have here in Brazil in terms of jurisdiction for arrests.
And so just on that, before we move on, what are some of the bases upon which you might be able to establish jurisdiction in Brazil? And I'm thinking of a scenario where you might have a claim where the obvious place for the substantive action is in England or in the US. Perhaps there's a governing law clause or something like that, or a jurisdiction clause in the contract, but you cannot find any security other than in Brazil. And you are then trying to look at that action, all those that set of facts, to see, well, can I bring substantive proceedings in Brazil so as to arrest the asset? What would be the types of factors that you'd be looking for to establish that type of substantive jurisdiction?
So again, we need to work under the domestic law here in Brazil. Mm-hmm. According to our law, the Brazilian court has jurisdiction when, for example, the place of the obligation or payment, for example, shall be completed here in Brazil. For example, we have a contract where the creditor is placed here in Brazil. The payment shall be done here in Brazil. So the place where the obligation should be completed is Brazil. Or, for example, the place where the contract is constructed or is completed. For example, in a maritime transportation, where Brazil is the place of cargo delivery. Mm-hmm. The port of discharge is placed in Brazil, for example. And we are discussing about a credit related to a cargo claim. In this case, Brazil has jurisdiction to decide about this cargo claim. That is the main claim. And also, consequently, you'll be entitled to, you'll have the jurisdiction to decide about a special measure for arrest of ship to provide to arrange for security to grant that main claim. And so basically, we have two important points to pay attention in terms of Brazilian jurisdiction. The place where the obligation shall be accomplished, or the place where the debitor is placed, where the payment shall be done. If you have one of these points detected in a concrete case, the Brazilian court will have jurisdiction to decide about the main claim and to decide about a possible arrest of the vessel cargo. Okay. But we have some cases where the parts have the option to submit the claim here in Brazil or abroad. For example, cargo claim related to a cargo that was loaded in Europe and discharged here in Brazil. Depends on the terms of the contract. Eventually, the parties decide to discuss about that contract in Europe, in England, for example, instead of Brazil. If a legal action is started in Europe before here in Brazil, before any discussion here in Brazil, Brazil has no more jurisdiction to decide about the merits of that case. and consequently has no more jurisdiction to decide about the request for arrest.
Right.
And
so you
we
have to move first in Brazil. You have to bring the substantial
yes.
first in Brazil. Yeah. Okay. And is
Yes,
it the domestic law that you're using to bring these types of proceedings? Is this a maritime-based jurisdiction, or could you invoke these types of claims in, say, commodities contracts or more general commercial situations?
No, fortunately we have a general rule that is applied for all cases, maritime matters and other cases related to regular relationships. Basically, this rule is set in the Brazilian Civil Procedure Code.
Mm-hmm.
That is applied for every case related to civil relationship here in Brazil. We have no special rule applied to shipping matters.
Yeah.
Just to complete my
go ahead.
Just complete my last mention about the jurisdiction when the claim is started abroad instead of here in Brazil. We have another situation. For example, let's consider that the parts decided to discuss cargo claim in Europe or in the US instead of Brazil. And they discuss the claim until reach a final decision that condemns someone to pay credits, to pay indemnity to the claimant. This decision provided by the court in Europe or US, for example, can be enforced here in Brazil. But we have a special proceedings to do that. Firstly, we need to submit that decision to the Superior Court here in Brazil to be homologated by a Brazilian judge. Okay, so this is a very special proceeding. We need to submit the award, the decision, and the Brazilian court will check, we will study, we will decide whether has some proceeding, has some right of defense violated in that regional, in that main claim. Okay. Actually, the Superior Court, the Brazilian court here in Brazil, will not re-decide the merits of the case.
Sure.
This proceeding related to homologation is just destined to check whether right of defense was violated or not. For example, if the condemned party has not the chance to present the defense, to present the required proofs, for example, documental proofs during the proceeding that run abroad. If the Superior Court identify that has no violation to the right of defense, then the court will homologate that decision, that will pass to be considered as a decision provided by Brazilian judge, as any other decision that we have here in Brazil. And as from this moment, when we have reached the homologation, we can enforce the condemnation here in Brazil. For example, to ask for an arrest of vessel to grant the payment of that credit set in the condemnation. Okay, so this is a very special proceeding in Brazil, but we can homologate a foreign decision here to then enforce that decision in Brazilian territory.
So that's very interesting, and thank you for explaining that. Is that the equivalent of recognition and enforcement proceedings under the New York Convention of Arbitral Awards, where, and I appreciate Brazil is not a party to that convention, is that right? That you said earlier they're not a party to the New York Convention, or they are?
No, Brazil is not party.
That's not part of that convention. I thought you said that before. So under that convention, at least for arbitral awards, you can bring proceedings in the state in which you want the award enforced for recognition and then enforcement, and then the award takes on the character of a local judgment. So the mechanism that you're talking about can be used for, can it be used for awards and for court judgments?
Yes, we have a concrete case that I can give you for an example of how it run here in Brazil. For example, we have a case where an owner of ship and a charter had a dispute in arbitration in London to discuss about the payment of the charter part. Okay, and they have had a final decision there that established the amount of the condemnation, and then the charter is based here in Brazil. So the owner asked the law firm to enforce that decision here in the Brazilian territory, because that charter is based here and their assets are based here as well. So they have no chance to enforce that condemnation. So the first thing that we needed to reach was to submit that arbitration decision to the Brazilian court, to the superior courts of justice here in Brazil. It's not a short proceeding. It's a simple proceeding, but it takes a lot of time. In that specific case, the proceeding took us about 2 years to reach the recognition decision from the Superior Court of Justice. And finally, when we obtained the homologation, we then extracted a letter from the Superior Court, and the letter of recognition, the letter of the homologation of the foreign decision, and then we submitted that letter to a local court where the charter is placed here in Brazil. A local court here in the countryside of São Paulo State. So the local judge is entitled to give enforcement to that letter. So now we are in this step specific.
Right. It's yes. So
the local judge.
Sorry, what happens in the? I suppose the question that immediately comes to mind then is what happens with the assets in the meantime. Is there anything preventing the target company, the debtor in that situation, or judgment debtor, from losing their assets?
I understand your point, because of course we are worried about the assets of the debtor while we are discussing the recognition of the foreign decision. But unfortunately, while we don't have the recognition, the homologation of the foreign decision, we cannot do anything in terms of obtain a security from the debtor. Okay. So firstly, we need to show the recognition, to then submit this recognition to the local judge that will start the proceedings to first, in the first moment, the judge will determine the to serve a summons to the opponent, the debtor part, giving a specific time limit, 15 business day time limit, to pay the updated amount in court. Otherwise, if this order is not accomplished by them, we finally will have the chance of arrest ship or cargo, or eventually to the bank balances of that company. So it's a long way to we reach this possibility.
Yeah, fascinating, really fascinating. Are there any particular requirements to bring an arrest? Do you have to post counter security, or prepare formal documents, POAs, things like that? What just very, the basic steps?
Yes, it's an important point, because we have a special rule here in Brazil that is applied for foreign companies that move here in the Brazilian court. In accordance to our procedural civil code, when a foreign company that has no assets in Brazil is intended to start a claim here, this company is obligated to present a security, a deposit in money calculated in 30%, about 30% of the involved amount. You print the court that in case that the claim is dismissed in the end, the claimant party will be paid on the succumbency fees and charges. Okay, because in accordance to our law, I think you have something similar in the US. When we have a dispute in court, in the end of the claim, the judge will condemn the losing party to pay the main amount of condemnation that was the object of the dispute, but also there is a condemnation to pay circumvents fees to the opponents. And in reason of this, the law sets this obligation to foreign companies when, in the first moment, when a foreign company starts a claim in court, the company needs to present, to execute a deposit of 30% of the involved amount in court. This amount is retained in a escrow account until the end of the claim. If the foreign company wins the claim, can withdraw the deposit. Otherwise, that deposit will be released to the opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. There's a similar process in a way in the US and in England. In the sense that in England you do, if you're the prevailing party, similarly, if you are the party who is defending an action and you prevail, you successfully defend that claim, then you are entitled to be paid your costs for being dragged to court. That is the situation in England. In the US, it's slightly different in that there is usually no award made as to costs between the parties. There may be a very small amount for court fees, but the parties' own legal costs are generally not part of a judgment in court. In arbitration, it's more like the English approach, generally speaking, where costs can be awarded. And now in the context of an attachment or arrest proceedings in the US, there is no requirement to post counter security to bring the arrest. Of course, you know, like most jurisdictions, there is the potential for a wrongful arrest, wrongful attachment type claim. And the threshold for those claims is quite high. It's, you know, bad faith, malice, that type of threshold, which is quite hard to establish. So typically the costs in the US are not as much of an issue as in England, but that does depend on certain factors. Yeah, so look, that's been very interesting, and we've covered a lot of ground there, Marcelo. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend, and to talk through these issues. I'm sorry that we can't meet in person in the near future, but I'm sure we will in due course. But I am grateful we've got this opportunity to speak. I'm very grateful for your time, and most importantly, I hope you and your family and colleagues and everyone that you know stays in good health and keeps safe during this very worrying and uncertain time. So thanks again for your time.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was very good to talk to you about the things here in Brazil. Special proceedings related to arrests of the vessel cargo and the credits. I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. It's always good to talk to you and to discuss about the different points of view on the Brazilian things, the US and England points of view on the same matters. I hope that we can work together in the near future. I will be at your disposal, or law firm Sammarco Laws will be at your disposal. So my regards to you, to everyone in Zadkovich. Hope that you and your family, your team can pass this period safe with health. And I hope that in the near future we can meet in person.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for those kind words. And for our audience, for those of you out there listening to this, if you found this interesting, relevant, of any use, please do share it with your networks. If you've got any questions for Marcelo or myself on how this is playing out in Brazil, what can be done in Brazil, any of the factors that we've talked about or others, then please do contact Marcelo directly. And if you want to discuss these kinds of issues in the US, England, or other jurisdictions, please do get in touch with me. Thank you for listening, and keep in touch, and stay safe, everyone.